Hope your week is going well. Happy first day of autumn. Today on today's Training Tuesday, fairly short one for you, but we do have some important information to impart. We're going to talk about the monthly bid buy trainings. We've scheduled them now. Most of them have been really the second or third Wednesday of each month. We wanted to have a little bit of flexibility if certain things came up in our training schedule. But we've gotten quite a bit of feedback from folks that want to know, you're going to have a new employee that's going to be starting, and you want to be able to kind of plan things a little bit more ahead of time. So what we decided to do is go ahead and just schedule trainings out for, perpetuity, essentially. So we're going to do it on the second Wednesday of each month moving forward. So that way, certain people can plan around it. If certain things come up where we aren't able to do it, we'll give plenty of notice. But that's kind of what we were doing anyway. Honestly, was that middle of the month, doing it on a Wednesday seemed to work best for folks. So we're going to go ahead and just lock that in on the second Wednesday of each month. And then another thing that has come up in the last week, you might have actually even seen it if you were creating a bid, is we have a custom column field that has been removed. And it is that, are you utilizing a small business? If you check yes to the small business question, it brings up a drop down. So we'll talk about that. So first off, our next training, so as I said, is now going to be the second Wednesday of each month, moving through next year, and then we'll kind of reevaluate maybe next year sometime. But this is a service that's going to be really valuable for certainly new folks that are new to bid buy, but anybody that needs a refresher as well. So the next training will be October 14th. And then November 12th. So as someone reached out this morning and was asking about it, and I said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to start doing the second Wednesday of each month. And she immediately emailed me back. And so a big shout out to Linda Linton, because November 11th, which would be the second Wednesday in November, is Veterans Day. So I doubt we would have a whole lot of attendees on a day that is a state holiday. So we're just going to move that to the next day. So that one will be November 12th. We'll circle back and make sure that everybody knows exactly what the dates are. But moving forward from there, then December 16th, and we'll just stay on that second Wednesday. Okay, and we're also going to have it locked in, so it will just be one specific one link for all of them. Each month has been a different one because we would schedule them a few weeks in advance. But at least this way we have a little bit more consistency. We'll put all this information out in the training center, and I'll let you guys know where that is, so you can have that set up and it's open and available for everybody. So you don't have to just be receiving an email or on these Training Tuesdays. I did see a question pop up. How can I get the alert to join the WebEx for my calendar? Okay, so if you email me, I can send you an invite. That's certainly an option. The reason we don't do particular or specifically do WebEx invites for these is we wanted to keep them open and available to anybody so that you wouldn't have to receive an invitation. So there is no password on here. You can just click the link and join us. You have the phone access that's down at the bottom as well. But if you want to so what I've done is, and what a lot of people do is you just create a calendar event for yourself, and then you'll receive an invite, or you'll receive the alert prior to, if you set it up that way. That's kind of the easiest way to do it, is just to put it on your own calendar. Okay, so any questions regarding that? I don't see anything else. Now this next piece is really exciting for Dave, I'll be honest with you. So to give a little bit of, so on the bid stage, when you are creating a bid, they're called custom columns. They're these fields that are at the bottom of the page those are the fields that have been configured specifically for state of Illinois. We call them custom columns, just so you guys know. At the bottom, so you have the question, is this a small business set-aside procurement? If you select yes, normally there would be a drop-down, or in the past there would be a drop-down that would say, are you utilizing an active registered small business set-aside program vendor? Now, that doesn't necessarily really make sense at the front end because we haven't even sent this bid out. So you would have to select not applicable because you don't know if you're using a small business vendor just yet. There is the potential that you would end up getting a waiver and then not going with a small business vendor. However, this was a required field. So it was just one more field that was in BidBuy that potentially we weren't getting a lot of value out of, but it was still a required field. And then just to give a little bit of a history behind this question, because there's been some confusion regarding it. So originally when the system was configured, this question said, is this subject to the small business set-aside program? And there was some confusion regarding that question. So I just want to unpack this real quick so everybody kind of understands what this means and the reporting implications of that. So when it used to say, is this subject to the small business set-aside program? Some agencies would look at that and say, this is a small purchase. Yes, it's subject to. Now you would bring up that next question. Yes, it's subject to. Are you utilizing a small business vendor? You would have the option of saying yes or no. So some agencies would look at it and say, well, even after I got a waiver, yes, it's subject to the small business, but we are not using a small business vendor. And so there's two different kind of delineations there. Some agencies would look at it and say, well, no, we got a waiver, so it is no longer subject to the small business set-aside program. So really the information that we were getting coming out of, or agencies were getting coming out of BidBuy, was not really consistent across the board. So about a year ago, I think, or so, this question has now been changed to, is this a small business set-aside procurement? So it either is or it isn't. If it is a small business set-aside procurement, that means that it is going to small businesses. So that is going to filter down to the PO as well. So that moved over to the PO, that same required field. If it's a small purchase and it's going out to small businesses only, yes, it is a small business set-aside procurement. Now, following your job aids if you resolicit because, say, for any reason that you have a small business set-aside waiver, when you clone the bid and you put it back out, now this is going to be changed to no. It's no longer a small business set-aside procurement because you have a waiver and it is going out to all vendors. Okay, but for a while we still had that same, even though we changed the language, we still had that drop down. So huge shout out to Randy Garst and the BidBuy team. I hopefully won't have to explain why we have that separate field down there anymore. So that's exciting. Any questions on that? I know there's kind of a lot to unpack there, but just know that it either is a small business set-aside procurement, which means it's going to a small business vendor, or it's not, and it's going out to all the vendors. Because once it's no longer set aside, even if it ends up going to a small business vendor, that's captured for your small business spend, but it just doesn't specifically count towards procurements that were set aside for small businesses. Hopefully that cleared up any confusion there. I certainly understand how that language could have been taken one of two ways. Okay, not seeing any questions there. We will move on. I have a question here. Okay, so there might be some confusion if it's still a set aside. So even if you have, this agency person was told, even if you have a small business set aside waiver, it is a small business set aside if it's above 2,000 and below small purchase threshold. He told me this a month or so ago. So if you have a waiver, it still counts towards your contracting with a small business vendor, but it doesn't count as a set aside. So there is a difference there. And maybe we can discuss that separately online as well, because if it's specifically set aside, only small business vendors are being able to compete for that. However, So this is this. It's kind of the same thing as let's look at it for an IFB that is not one of the set aside codes, right? So it's not set aside, but a small business vendor technically could still bid on it and win, but it doesn't count as as a set aside. I hope that's clear. But yeah, I'll go back and double check and make sure that we're on the same page regarding that. Okay, I'll make a note of that real quick. Okay, and then this day in history, not really technically a fun fact, but this day in history, in July 1862, President Lincoln read his preliminary proclamation to his cabinet, then decided to wait for a Union military victory to issue. On September 22nd, 1862, following the victory at Antietam, he signed the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation, formally alerting the Confederacy of his intention to free all persons held as slaves within the rebellious states. 100 days later, with the Confederacy still in full rebellion, President Abraham Lincoln issued the final Emancipation Proclamation. So, this day, 1862, Lincoln actually signed the Emancipation Proclamation and then issued it 100 days later. All right, that's it for this week's Training Tuesday, and we'll see you next week. Have a fantastic rest of your week, folks. Thank you. Of course, this will be posted and the slides will be sent out per usual. Thank you.